There are emotional moments attempted and some action beats that aren't the worst thing in the world to look at, but out of everything, maybe one aspect of Venom: The Last Dance worked for me, and even then, it barely made it past the finish line. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and this might just be the most disappointing movie this year. And remember, Joker 2 came out recently. Overall, Tom Hardy does a great job of playing a manic, crazy person who's lost his marbles long ago, and his charismatic performance was what had me entertained for portions of its runtime. But this ain't it, and without Tom Hardy, this definitely would not have been it. Starting out, I began to question if this movie was going to give us more than we ever realized it could. Now, I guarantee you I kinda ruined the movie for myself by rereading the King in Black storyline and diving into the specifics of how that could be transitioned into a couple MCU projects, but I doubt I would have had a better time with or without the speculation. But it turned out to be worse than anything I could have dreamed of, because it does have some half-assed elements thrown in, but everything else was only hinted at, so when all of that proceeds to never be paid off, that just left a bad taste in my mouth. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, there are emotional moments that don't completely fall flat, but rather than subtly hinting at them to be brought back by its end, those beats are forced directly into our faces. So sadly, it was really only Eddie and Venom's dynamic that compelled me to stay somewhat invested. If anything, that relationship needed to be lent into more, because any moment that worked was a moment that built off of that relationship. And it's not a spoiler at all, but I'm gonna mention one thing about Null, so maybe just click away if you're adamant about going in spoiler free, though I definitely would have preferred it if someone gave me this warning before going in, because not only is Null just not in this movie, he also gives this introductory exposition that just made him feel like a generic evil entity, reminding me of the beginning of Thor: The Dark World or any other lazy sci-fi intro, which I guess he kinda is similar to that kind of threat, but everything about him in this movie just made him seem lesser. And I managed to have fun with both of the first two, but Venom: The Last Dance doesn't even hit the guilty pleasure bar, and that's quite a low bar for me. But if you're still interested in what will probably be the final installment in this Venom trilogy, I'm not going to stop you from checking it out, though I would not recommend it. But now, let's dive into the spoilers so I can talk about exactly what didn't work for me. And I've already brought up how non-existent Null is, maybe a total of a couple minutes, and he doesn't even stand up. He just has his scorpion monsters go in place of him, and I'll talk more about them later, but they also didn't work for me. Yet after introducing Null, the movie shows Venom and Eddie in 616, which it's not 616, I made a video about it recently, but that doesn't matter. Because the reason I'm bringing it up was because it retconned the Venom drop not being left in the MCU. Honestly, I don't even know if that is the case, but it pretty much tried to rewrite No Way Home's post-credits and make it into its own thing. And on top of that, Eddie teleported back to his universe with the same effect that Null's monsters used, just pasting it over the top of the multiverse phasing we saw before. And another mystifying aspect of this movie was the inclusion of Rhys Ifans, who is not the Lizard. He's not even this world's variant of Kurt Connors, because his name was Marty or something. But anyway, him and his family got way too much screen time, pulling focus away from Eddie in an attempt for entertainment and emotional payoff, I guess. But both of those fell flat. Plus, maybe it was just me, but Ifan's fake American accent was incredibly distracting. But really, the movie failed because of how lacking in tension the narrative was. In fact, the story was formed with a specific aspect that gave the protagonist such an easy out, it made any bit of conflict that did happen come off as unnecessary and manufactured. Because all it took for Venom to get out of danger, at least from the monsters, was to just hide inside Eddie. And it wasn't just weird to build a story to not have Venom in his full form, but it diffused any bit of tension that the story had managed to conjure up. And as I alluded to earlier, the monsters hunting down Venom were not threatening at all. Sometimes they were written to be unstoppable and would devour everything in its path, and other times it seemed like it could be taken down easily. Of course, no matter what happened, they would just reform, so it didn't even matter how durable they were, though their power scaling should have been defined more clearly. I'm getting ahead of myself, but for the final act, I kept thinking that they better not just have the scorpion monster as the big bad, and it wouldn't have solved all of this movie's issues to have Null at that moment step out and wreck shop, but instead of just one uninteresting monster to fight, the third act has multiple monsters. And during that third act, the movie also gives us all of the symbiotes, even a two-headed one. Was there narrative reason and importance for it to have two combined bodies? Nah, but it was cool and reminded me of some of the hybrid symbiotes. As that happened, it also made me think of how we got the whole Shazam family over on the DC side, except it was even less deserved in Venom 3. One of those symbiotes, I think, was Agony, and it seemed like she could tap into the Speed Force or something. I don't know, it was probably just electric powers, but it looked like super speed to me. But that doesn't matter, because maybe if some of those other people were actual characters before getting symbiotes, that might have made the finale more compelling, but that also would have taken focus away from Eddie, who didn't get nearly enough to do, if only to actually hit the emotional moments. That being said, once Venom says he wishes he could have seen Lady Liberty, that kinda worked for me. Maybe it was just the sappy music or Tom Hardy crushing it, but I felt it. Naturally, they then attempted to hammer that further by playing an actual sappy pop song, and that was just too much. And I wasn't sure when to bring this guy up, so I just saved him until the end. But the military guy in charge of Chiwetel Ejiofor, who was always cloaked in shadow, was that supposed to be someone of note? I don't know, because he just disappears after being a presence in the narrative twice. But what are your thoughts on Venom: The Last Dance? I might be too blinded by Null's comic counterpart, so let me know. Am I over-exaggerating how wasted Null was? Drop a comment with your thoughts. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.